Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. Today is Thursday, February 21st, 2013, and I'm Darko. I'm going to cover the war on terror, liberty, sovereignty, Syria, Iran, Turkey, that type of news. And then in the next, probably the second or third video, I'll get into the economy and eugenics and similar news. So, Assad government stands steadfast against foreign conspiracies. A political analyst tells Press TV that the fact of the matter is that the Assad regime and the Syrian army are very, very strong, and it seems that we will continue to see the Assad regime fighting back. It says that every week we hear that the Assad government and the Assad regime is about to collapse for the last time. It says, I would say for the last year or so. The fact this Al-Omari also said, so I doubt that although things on the ground look very, very catastrophic, I do not think that the Assad regime is about to fall. In fact, I think it will probably fight and can last for years, or fight for years. This is one of the strongest armies in the region, and I can't see why some people seem to think that it's about to collapse. Syrian opposition sets conditions for talks with Assad, so the Syrian National Coalition opposition group is ready to negotiate a departure for Assad with any member of his government who has not participated in the crackdown on the uprising. So they flood in terrorists, create sectarian violence, blame all the violence on the government and the crackdown, and of course, according to Brookings Institute policy for regime change, Assad is not going to be part of any end of violence or basically peace plan. And we'll go back to that in a minute. Foreign fighters in Syria talk tough but fear defeat. So this is a regular, the medialine.org. So tens of thousands, if not more, of foreign fighters are making their way into Syria to join the rebel forces as they fight against the regime of Assad. As the civil sectarian war enters its third year, among the non-Syrians reported to be fighting alongside the rebel forces, also Al-Qaeda, and that are Americans. We saw a video of either an American or Canadian guy fighting with them, Syrians, Moroccans, Libyans, Egyptians, Bosnians, and others. However, in conversations, it remains unclear whether their addition to the battle will be able to turn the tide against Assad's army, with some already abandoning a battle they're not certain they can win. It says here, a Syrian living in Egypt with close ties to the Syrian military says here that the majority of foreign fighters are Tunisians and Libyans, followed by Afghans. It says here also, Libya has been providing training and weapons. Remember, I was talking about smuggling state, and has training camps in the vast desert where they can train in secret. My first instinct is that the Americans are CIA operatives also in Libya as well, so they're the ones running the whole thing, funneling weapons to terrorists. It says there are around 150,000 foreigners fighting against the Syrian regime in Syria. So that's why when they call Syrians the opposition, they're actually a lot of foreigners. Qatar gives $100 million in humanitarian aid to Syria. So Qatar has been known to the biggest supplier of cash for weapons. Qatar has given $100 million in aid to Syrians stricken by the country's civil war on Thursday. It goes on here, it says they've been the most vocal regional supporters, not just vocal, they're giving them physical, tangible things to kill people and maintain the violence and escalating it, has called for an Arab force to end the bloodshed if international diplomatic efforts fail. They're not stupid, they're just like every other country, big country. They're not a big country, but they have a lot of money like a big country, and they know how to play the humanitarian aid game and flood in mercenaries and foreigners to create havoc until they get what they want, so they can lay their little natural gas pipeline through Syria. The UK could provide military support for insurgents in Syria. Well, that just kind of leads you to think that they're not doing it already. Well, they are. So Britain could send security and civilian military trainers to assist insurgents in Syria despite failing to lift the European Union arms embargo. It allows us, and Foreign Minister William Hague said, it allows us, I think it's a typo, to supply a greater range of equipment to protect civilian life in Syria. He claimed, this was his claim, despite the British government being repeatedly accused of arming the Syrian terrorists, really foreigner terrorists. Iraq shuts down 3 illegal tunnels to Syria. A joint force from Iraqi Army and Border Guard on Wednesday discovered 3 tunnels used to smuggle weapons and goods between Iraq and Syria. So it goes on here and it says that they discovered these tunnels for basically these smugglers seized light weapons, ammunition, and other goods, including 200 Kalashnikovs, 20,000 bullets, cigarettes, wireless communication devices, and computers. So that's going for the mercenaries. And they're talking about security personnel are currently analyzing information on the confiscated computers. It probably has all kinds of coordinates and plans, and basically details about the whereabouts of certain depots, arms depots, and movements of the Syrian government that only the British intelligence and U.S. intelligence would know. Iraq gives go-ahead for Iranian pipeline to Syria. It says here, Iranian gas pipeline to embattled ally Syria set to move forward following Iraqi approval. So Iraq has approved the construction of a natural gas pipeline across its territory that will connect Iran to key ally Syria. It will strengthen Tehran's influence over its neighbors. So actually, when the U.S. went into Iraq and it did the whole thing with the regime change there, with Saddam Hussein, they actually strengthened Iran, and everybody in the international community knows this. Just like with the sanctions, they're actually people that would know that don't really like or not really big with the government, just like in Syria. Now they actually rally around them, so they're creating a good little enemy, which is probably the point. But this is kind of a big deal because we were talking about Qatar wanting to run their own natural gas pipeline here, and then Iran just goes by and basically sets it up themselves. But I've said a million times about the Pakistani-Iranian pipeline. They keep trying to set contracts for it, and then the U.S. kind of gets in there and interferes. And of course, what do you have? Well, you have explosions. There was a lot of explosions and death in Pakistan and instability there in the last week or two. And in Iraq, this last week they were getting hammered. So just get ready to see 200, 300 dead in explosions in Iraq here in the next week. Israel awards U.S. oil firm license to drill in Golan Heights. So again, this is a big deal. It goes on here and it says that the Israeli regime has awarded U.S. energy company a license to drill for oil on Syria's occupied Golan Heights. Israel occupied and annexed the Golan Heights area in 1967 in a move not recognized by the UN and the international community. It says Damascus has been demanding full return to the territory since. Israel's reach for the energy resources in the region comes amid a prolonged deadly unrest, which has been plaguing Syria since March 2011. Assad must stay out of talks as the opposition against this is a so-called Syrian National Coalition has expressed opposition to the engagement of Syria's Assad in any talks aimed at ending the crisis. So it says Bashar al-Assad and security leadership are outside the political process, the opposition coalition said. Remember that this guy represents, this Khatib guy represents big oil and the West. I think he even went to an American university. On January 30th, this Khatib announced that he's ready for direct discussions. Then on February 13th, Syrian Foreign Ministry issued a statement saying the country is ready for dialogue with the opposition in Syria, as long as it's based on political reforms outlined by Assad. So I did find this kind of interesting how he's kind of coming in here ready to talk again. This is like another type of sly, slick move that they're doing, the opposition that is with this guy is their front. I actually thought that they wanted peace and that the West wanted to keep the violence going, but they always have these different multifaceted attacks or operations going at the same time, basically constantly evolving and changing. And so, this is just one part of it, having him act like he wants to have, sit down and actually talk about peace. But he's not going to get it. He knows that too. Turkey agrees Kurdish delegation to meet jailed militant leader. Oh, just one quick note. He also knows that like I was just going off what I was saying, that the rebels are really just getting their asses kicked. So, and that's why they get desperate and carry out the suicide bombing attacks. So, I mean, why would they be willing to sit down and talk unless, they felt like they were losing a lot of options now? Turkey agrees Kurdish delegation to meet jailed militant leaders. It's kind of weird. Turkish government approved on Thursday a list of pro-Kurdish politicians to visit jailed militant leader. Says a long-awaited step to advance peace talks. But this is pretty interesting too, because remember you just had the PKK members that were killed in France, assassinated, probably by French intelligence, for Israel, for Turkey, who knows. Can Turkey cause a global power shift in joining the SCO? This has been talked about recently, but it's just like everything else. It's just kind of hearsay until it happens. After years of delay on its application to join the EU as a full member, Turkey has made overtures to the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, as an alternative to the EU. I was talking about how, this whole thing with Syria, it looks like Turkey's just kind of being taken for a ride here, and they're going to get left to be, basically hung out to dry at the end. He says here, and they're doing all of this for what? So they can get into the European Union. The European Union needs to stop stalling us, says Erdogan. We have a strong economy. I told Putin you should include us in the Shanghai Five, and we'll say farewell to the EU. So this could cause a global shift in power. Syrian rebels sign deal. The rebels signed a deal with the Kurdish militia. So it says the Free Syrian Army, one of the major rebel factions, has announced a pact with the Popular Protection Units, a Kurdish militia faction which they have been fighting for control over Kurdish towns in the nation's northeast. It says the YPG spun the deal as a victory, saying that the Free Syrian Army had in effect promised to withdraw from the towns and return for an end to the fighting. It says the Free Syrian expansions into the oil-rich Kurdish northeast have sparked months of clashes with these Popular Protection Units and several other militias gaining local support to resist the incursion. The Free Syrian Army's close ties with the Turkish military and this YPG's links to the PKK make such a truce likely to be controversial in the long run, but practical in the short term for both factions, seeing it as a chance to establish a de facto Kurdish autonomy in the region. Assad's forces withdrawn from the area, the pact will also allow the Free Syrian Army to claim liberation of the region without actually having to fight the Kurds over control, at least for now. Then you have Lebanon, maybe the new front in Syria's war. I keep seeing this in the news. Lebanon seems to be moving closer to becoming a major new front in Syria's 2-year-old civil sectarian war. There are clashes in Syria between rebel forces and Hezbollah. So it goes on there and makes the argument again, appears to intend to protect vital supply routes, Hezbollah, that is, the Syrian forces. Israel views this flow of weapons with considerable alarm. That's the thing. That's why they basically carried out that airstrike on the Syrian border, somewhat inside Syria. They struck a research factory, actually, but they said they were striking weapons that were going to Hezbollah. Free Syrian Army says they will hit Lebanon in response to Hezbollah fire. It says here, if Hezbollah does not stop shelling Syrian territories, villages, and unarmed civilians from inside Lebanese territory within 40 hours, we will respond with our arms sources of its fire and silence them inside Lebanese territory. So the Lebanese don't want anything to have to do with this, basically. But it's funny because these same people, these foreigners that aren't even really Syrians, were inside Turkey and firing shells, killing civilians inside Syrian border. So, who the hell are they, right? It says Syria claims to down Israeli drone over Lebanon. Israel violates Lebanon's airspace on a daily basis and nothing happens about it or to it. Eyewitnesses in the village report spotting burning wreckage fall from the sky. So a resident posted on a local Facebook group shortly thereafter he saw a surface-to-air missile fired from Syria and that the aircraft crashed on the Lebanese side of the border. Then missile blast wounds Syrian rebel commander. Wounded, the missiles struck the command center of the main Syrian rebel force near Damascus. Syria car bomb explosion kills 53 and injures 250. Says here that it was blamed on terrorists. The Foreign Ministry said it was carried out by armed terrorist groups linked to al-Qaeda that received financial and logistic help from abroad. Again, these were the same people that were talking about killing unarmed civilians. Mortars hit Damascus Stadium, kills soccer player. 2 mortars explode next to a soccer stadium in central Damascus, killing 1 player and injuring several others. Mortar attack, that's coming from the Free Syrian Army. So it's getting pretty close to, the internal structure, the main structure of Syria, which is Damascus. Then we have female Syrian refugees in Turkey being sold to Arab states as a Turkish politician. Goes on here and he says that women and girls are being sent to neighboring rich Arab states in exchange for money. He also said that refugee children from Syria are also being trained to use guns and are sent to Syria to fight against Syrian government forces. Then Armenia struggles to absorb Christian refugees from Syria. So these people are being targeted by these Sunni extremist foreigners. Syrian violence threatens ancient treasures. That's right. Just like Egypt and other places. It says here that one of humanity's greatest cultural heritage remains in grave peril. And they're blaming it on the troops who shell indiscriminately and these looters. Well, who are these people? Struggling Syrian rebels, the rebels, sell off country's past to fund its future ancient artifacts sold just over the border to give fighters needed cash. And we're going to return with this article right here. Al-Qaeda's top recruiting tool is the CIA. Saudi Arabia, Qatar back Washington's global terror net. This is GGN, and I'm Darko. Thank you.